Hi everybody and welcome to SA Rugby Magazine. I'm Kevin Ferguson. I've got Mark Keohane and Zelim now. Z-Man. Zay.
Hey.
How are you, bud?
I'm good. How are you, Kev?
Yeah, I'm good, man. Good to see you. Lots to talk about. You got CJ Stander retiring, which was a shock to everybody.
Yeah.
We should have the announcement of the British Lions by Tuesday next week. Probably the worst kept secret in the world. It should be going to the UK.
It's going to Australia, mate.
Probably going to the UK. And we've got a great New Zealand clash in Auckland on the weekend.
Right.
So a good weekend for rugby fans.
Yeah, and thank God the EP Elephants aren't playing. They played in the week and they got 0.
Got that out the way.
Got that out the way. Took a 40-pointer against Griquas, so in the warm-up games. So we'll just forget about that for now.
Rome wasn't built in a day.
Exactly what it was burnt in today.
CJ Stander, I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Mark?
Well, I was just amazed that he's retired. I mean, he's 30 years old. He's in the form of his life. He's played his 50th test for Ireland. He's represented the Lions. He's had such success. He's become a cult figure at Munster and within the Irish setup. And immediately he's coming home. He's coming home to Pretoria, to South Africa. I reckon, don't put it past Jake White, he'll be picking him in the next season. By the time he turns 31, he'll have that lust to play rugby again. Very divided in Ireland and around the world. The story about CJ Stander in terms of the project players. He went over, he said, I want to play for Ireland. I'm here for 3 years to qualify. He's been magnificent for Ireland, but I'm out of there straight away. And you've got Dan Leo, who heads up the Pacific Islands Association, saying, we've been battling for 20 years to get players who have played one test for the All Blacks. Can't play for Tonga, can't play for Samoa, can't play for Fiji. Yet this guy, and he said it's no disrespect to CJ Stander. Sure. He said it's the system. He arrives, plays for that country, and immediately goes back to the country of his birth. So he was never going to settle in Ireland and stay in Ireland. You know, he wanted to relocate back.
You can't blame him for that.
No, I don't blame him for that. They're talking about the rule of when does someone become naturalized. We had Sean Sowerby many years ago. He played one match for the Springboks, went over to France, was magnificent for a decade, married a French woman. He's still in France, and he was never allowed to play for France because of a 10-minute spell with the Springboks. So I think that's where people are coming in on the CJ Stander thing, that it was so immediate. I'm out of here, my last game, I'm back to South Africa.
Well, with all respect, Derby's not been known for forward-thinking people.
Only forward passes.
What do you think, Zelim?
I was surprised as everybody else. I feel like it's such a sudden move. CJ has to know that he isn't going to be in the Lions' plans for this tour, surely. I mean, there's no way he's announcing this now, thinking there's any chance he's going to be playing in this Lions tour. There's been talk about him being unhappy with the contract renegotiations in Ireland and what they've offered and tabled there. There's something else to the story. It can't just be he's like suddenly decided he's had enough of rugby. He's played his 50th test. He doesn't really care whether he plays for the Lions, and he's just going to go home, to watch the sunset.
There's something not adding.
There's got to be something more to this story. And I'm sure, like you say, we're going to find out in the next couple of months, whether he ends up playing for the Bulls or not.
Yeah, you look at his career and the way he embraced being in Ireland and how the Irish people just took to him. I always thought of him as his life would be in Ireland. You'd see him a lot in South Africa. You'd visit, he'd potentially have business interests here, but he would kind of see himself as being Irish. And it just seems so abrupt. Home is South Africa.
Well, what as someone that's come from the outside living here, what you never hear anybody say is, I'm leaving a country to go and live in Pretoria. Cape Town, yes. Pretoria, no. Sorry, Pretoria people, but not really on the.
But I mean, let's just say he gets picked for the Lions, and he has a great tour, and at the end of the year he announces, I feel like I've done what I wanted to do. My body isn't where it was, and I'm going to pack it in, and I'm going to head back to South Africa. Like the timing of that would kind of make more sense. Or if they'd announced the squad and said, CJ is not in our plans. Maybe, but it just seems the timing right now, and straight after his 50th.
Yeah, and with one game to go in the Six Nations for Ireland. And he's not 34, he's 30, and a very heartfelt kind of release and well written, and thanking everyone in Ireland, thanking the Munster people. Rory Best, who captained, and said if every player who put on an Irish jersey had his attitude and his love for Ireland, pick him. But it just seems so abrupt. And also, if something is going on behind the scenes that one's not privy to. And I can tell you now, it's I don't mean it as a joke. Jake White would certainly be saying, if CJ Stander is back in this town, I'm going to manage him right back into that pool setup and let him play for us.
You'd be stupid not to.
Yeah, you can't have too many guns.
Exactly.
Unless they still think he's too small in Pretoria.
Jake will ask you to play hooker maybe.
Trouble.
Maybe. So I think there's something more to the story. Obviously, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but like you say, when someone says that's it, they're still 3 to 4 years out from being in their prime. Lions tour coming up. Maybe there's a little bit more to the story, and hopefully it'll unfold and we can get to the bottom of it.
But again, on that, and we've spoken often about it, is the plight of these Islanders players who were picked up early by New Zealand, played a test or two, that was it. And surely if you want to make world rugby stronger and you want those teams to be competitive, let Charles Piutau play for Tonga. It'll be an incredible draw card at a World Cup in test matches. Or you've got those guys.
You can't have that rule for one.
But all those guys have to be very particular that they don't want to play for New Zealand. They want to play for the island of their heritage or the island of their birth, because a lot of those players weren't born in those islands. It's their grandfather or their father that's come from there. I think you had that. There were in the last World Cup there were 4 Pacific Island born players in the New Zealand squad, and I think Samoa had 17 New Zealand born players in their squad. So which one are you? But it's, if World Rugby is looking at trying to get that second tier stronger, surely you want the strongest players playing for those teams, and not just a blanket rule to say 6 years ago you played 2 tests for the All Blacks, so you can never play for Samoa or Tonga or Fiji or whatever.
So, I think you fix it with the blanket rule. You say you play for the country that you're born in. Then you'd never have these guys playing for the All Blacks. They could go play Super Rugby for the Crusaders. They could, advertise their wares there, get their profile up, and then get picked for one of those super clubs. But ultimately, if you want to play international rugby, you play for the country that you're born in. And there'll be times where there's a guy who's born in Bangladesh who's actually a South African and he can never play for the Box, and that's just tough cookies. It'll avoid this kind of situation. I think that's the way to go.
Bangladesh could have quite a team.
That's.
I'm glad you're not teaching my children.
What? That's
the way to roll. Just have the guy. If you're born in the country, that's where you play. Ultimately, Test rugby is a celebration of nations.
But if I'm born here and 6 months later I'm shipped off to the UK and I spend the next 20 years in the UK, I think there's got to be some rationale behind it. If you've never played for your country or you weren't developed yet, very different. But so if I go to France at 19, as Peter de Villiers did, he went to France not to play rugby, he went to kind of experience culture and life. Ended up at Stade Francais, got contracted, and he's been there ever since. He popped back to South Africa for a couple of years in terms of business, but his wife's family's on that side. His kids were all born there. He's a Frenchman as much as he's a South African, but he played Test rugby 70 times for France, and he was French. And when he retired, he stayed in France. That's where Paris was his home. So that poor bugger, you would have said, no, he's out. He's got to go back to South Africa.
But no matter how you cut it, no matter which way you do it, even if you say, if you leave the country by the time you're 18, it's fine, you can qualify to play for somebody else. There's going to be a sad story somewhere where somebody misses out because they took a flight at the wrong time. There's no way to not have this situation.
Or I had a night of passion at the wrong time. But CJ, geez, I was quite surprised. At 30, and he's really been in good form, man.
Yeah, and there's nobody behind him. It's not like there's a young up-and-comer who's pushing him for playing time. He walks away. Who does Ireland start at 8?
Well, James Lowe's heading out as well. The Chiefs winner, who's been there 3 years, qualified, picked this year for Six Nations. The minute that contract is over, he's back in the North Island of New Zealand, either playing provincial rugby or opening his business. So it's
messy.
I think where it's messy for Ireland is, how do they continue to sell that to their public? Because there's no longevity in those players. They come in here, so do they accept, okay, these 3 players are going to make us very good, or in the top 3 of the world, but they're never going to be Irish in that sense, because they straight back to New Zealand or South Africa or Australia when it's over.
Look, yeah, I mean, Ireland's one of those places it's great to visit, but not to live. People are lovely, but you can't take them 365 days a year. You'd be drunk every fucking day. I mean, it's an interesting place to live, and I've lived there.
Spoken like a true Welshman.
So yeah, anyway, that's.
But so you'd agree with Eddie Jones when he called it a crappy little island?
No, I wouldn't agree with anything Eddie Jones said.